I tend more to sit back and watch other people. That's what's made me appear to, except when among my own intimate friends. Then obviously one opens up and we swap ideas and things. But so consequently, Peter Ustinov, one woman said to me, I have heard that you're funnier than Peter Ustinov. She's a very famous French socialite. I said, who told you? She said, this man here told me. And I said, first I've heard about it. He said, but you're funny. You have tell her a funny story. You're not a man. So I said, I don't know any funny stories. She said, I refuse to believe that. Now, what are you going to do? You're standing there. I mean, I wouldn't think of going up to somebody and saying, I hear you're a very good accountant. He'd say, yes, that is quite right, yes. So, would you do me a column of figures? And no, I couldn't really, no. Go on, please, a quick one. Oh, well. What, I mean, running into 1,000, shall we say, or... I say, it's not for me, it's for my sister. She loves your figures. Oh, really? Yes, she collects all of them. She's seen all of your accounts. Oh, what was your favourite account? Oh, I don't know. I had one, I mean, you could take it on that sort of line.
By 1964, Peter Sellers had become one of the most popular as well as critically celebrated actors ever to come out of Britain. Dr. Strangelove would bring him his first Oscar nomination, while The Pink Panther would spawn the legendary Inspector Clouseau. With the world at his feet, he now had the power to do anything he wanted. Amidst all this activity, Sellers was still finding time to document his own life on his own cameras. And while he was making the second Inspector Clouseau film, A Shot in the Dark, with the director Blake Edwards, he met a young actress called Britt Ekland and married her 11 days later.
He was very suave, very sophisticated. He wasn't handsome in the classical word handsome, but he was attractive looking. He was in his thin period. I remember dinners, Trader Vic's, those drinks with straws. I remember a little dog. He gave me a little dog. It's not a very practical gift, I suppose. I remember Elsted, the house that we were later to live in. He took me out there. I remember him taking me to meet Princess Margaret and Lord Snowdon before we got married. The Pink Panther was playing and was a huge success, and Dr. Strangelove was coming out as well. So he was successful, very, very successful.
Good evening, Monsieur Belland.
Good evening, Inspector.
If you don't mind, there are one or two questions I would like to ask.
Of course.
Some points that need clearing up.
Certainly. And you play billiards, by any chance?
Billiards? Oh, well, yes, I have played some billiards in my time.
I find that it makes for a more relaxed and friendly conversation. How about you?
Yes.
Take a cue.
Ah, cue, yes. That will do. Very strange.
Well, I think you'd be better off in an ordinary cue. That's what we call a bridge.
Ah, the bridge cue, yes. Yes, I much prefer the good old-fashioned plain cue, you know. Yes, yes.
I very rarely go and see my own films. Once they're done, I hate to watch myself working. I found that the majority of comedians and humorists are, in the main, quite serious people. A typical example of that is Spike Milligan. I think that it's mainly the straight actors who've got all the jokes and the comics who just sit and stare.
I don't think that whether or not he was funny was of great interest to him. I don't think that he woke up many times thinking that. He might have awakened many times and said, you know, am I going to be depressed today? Is it going to be a good day for me? Am I going to have to put up with my demons? I don't know. When you get as complicated as Peter was, it's really hard to diagnose him, to analyze him. He was not a happy man. He had happy times, but they were, I think, well overshadowed by his demons.
Good afternoon. I'm speaking from this very delightful room in Brookfield, where we're all celebrating Peter's wedding today, and we're making this little film just as a memento for posterity so that he can look back in years to come upon the happiness he found today. And I'm going to bring in front of the camera for Peter to be able to see and maybe laugh about and be pleased about in a touch of nostalgia some of his friends who's invited here today. First of all, somebody who should remember the date, February the 19th, apart from the fact it's Peter's wedding. I believe it's your birthday.
Yes, it is. That's right. Yes, thank you.
Look at the
Very
camera. I
nice.
shouldn't
Look,
have to tell you
camera.
that,
Hello,
should I?
camera.
And perhaps you'd like to record a little message.
Stan, we're now, darling, this is being recorded. Everything we're saying now.
I love you.
You hear that, folks?
I love you.
She said she loved me. In on pre-strike film, she loves me.
I was at boarding school. I was told to get my stuff together because I was going out for the day, but nobody told me what. And the driver who picked me up, possibly Bert, said it was because father was getting married, and we arrived here an hour or so later, and the place was just encamped.
We didn't actually get to go to the wedding ceremony, which I can remember I would have liked to have done. I think we actually watched it on telly on the day.
It's not good music for Christmas, is it?
Peg was at the wedding, but it never developed into any loving relationship between Peg and her new daughter-in-law. I think Anne, Peter's first wife, actually developed more of a relationship with Peg after they were divorced because of the grandchildren, Michael and Sarah. But Brit was never a favourite of Peg's. She was known as the bleeding Nazi. That bleeding Nazis married my darling boy. And that's as far as I think I don't think they spoke two words. That was it.
Got married on a Wednesday, and he left on the Saturday because he had to start working on the Monday in Hollywood.
And very quickly he wanted you by his side, and you had this contract to fulfill in London. What happened?
Easter was coming up, his children were going out to spend time with him, and he said, "Can't you come?" I said, "Well, I will ask the film company," and they said no, they wouldn't give me the time off. So he said, "Well, just take the time anyway. I will arrange it, I'll fix it." I knew in my heart, I have very, very good instincts, and I knew when I don't follow my instincts, things always go wrong. And I knew in my heart I was doing the wrong thing. I just knew it. But I wasn't my own woman in those days. So I went, and I mean, it was fabulous being together.
Hello and welcome to Hollywood. Casablanca Tours invites you to see the homes of the stars. See the homes of Lucille Ball.
He brought me to this marble palace just off Sunset Boulevard, outside Beverly Hills. He had a whole wardrobe filled with clothes. Everything from shoes, bathing suits, dressing gowns, nightgowns, day clothes, evening gowns. I mean, it was everything that I, in my dream in Sweden, thought Hollywood should be.
And all of that was quite good fun. It was all a bit magical because obviously he was being courted by the companies, although he'd probably been contracted. They were laying this on, they were laying that on. Everything was like, you know, people were falling over themselves to make sure everything was okay. I remember going down to Disneyland with him. We went on a special VIP tour to Disneyland because he'd never been to Disneyland.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're very honored indeed tonight to have as our guest a gentleman who is one of the great comedians of all time, one of the great actors of all time, and a fine feller, Mr. Peter Sellers. Peter Sellers has appeared in so many motion pictures that I don't think we would have time tonight to mention them all. Some of the more popular ones in this country were The Mouse That Roared, I'm All Right, Jack, Waltz of the Toreadors, Only Two Can Play, and currently, of course, he's being acclaimed practically the world over for his fantastic multiple performance, playing 3 roles in the motion picture Dr. Strangelove. Where was that made?
Well, that was made in England, Steve. I know it looks like it was made here, but that's through, of course, Stanley's great care.
Maybe it was better that Peter Sellers was not a writer, not a director, so he could be a kind of, he could be vapor, left to sheer comic vapor that somebody else had to coalesce. It wasn't in his power to do it. You know, I'll give you 100 takes, I'll give you 100 faces, and you take the one you want. One of his favorite, if not his very favorite movie, was a movie I made called The Producers. I sent the script to Peter Sellers, and I told him about this project. And he had to go to Bloomingdale's. So we walked around Bloomingdale's. He was shopping, I was talking. I'd be in the middle of a very important moment where Bialystok says to Bloom, do you want to live in a gray little world? Do you want to be confined? Don't you want to fly like a butterfly? Don't you want to leave your cage? And he'd say, you like this buckle? Isn't that a nice buckle? What do you think of this buckle? You know, he didn't mean to be rude. He was just a series of different foci, you know, he'd focus on something and he'd get lost in it. So anyway, I spent the whole afternoon trying on shoes with him and doing all of this stuff at Bloomingdale's. And at the end of it, I gave him the script, and I don't know if he ever read it or not, but I got an answer back, not from Peter, but from one of his agent, Dennis Hellinger. He said, I don't know if Peter read it or not. He's so meshuggah, he's so crazy. He's locked into so many things now. This is not the right time to approach him with the material, you know. And,
last evening, we raised a question which has not been resolved. Perhaps you can contribute something to this the discussion. The question was, it literally occurred to me at home yesterday, how the heck do you address your mother-in-law?
Well, I think the English have quite a good way out of it. Seems some of them, they just say, hello.
On the morning of April 6, 1964, Peter Sellers was rushed to Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in downtown Los Angeles. Diagnosis, heart attack.
And then one morning, I remember waking up one morning, there was all commotion, there was people all over the place, there was noise, there was people coming and going, and then suddenly these sort of white-suited types come, you know, the nurses or whatever, the ambulance drivers come out with him on a gurney saying, and he gets up on his elbow and he said, look, not feeling very well, I've got to go to hospital for a bit, so I'll be a few days and I'll see you soon.
If you have, in fact, 13 heart attacks, one in a row, and the supply of blood to the brain is stopped for a maximum period of 2 minutes, I think something must happen. They did tell me that I suffered no brain damage at all. But I'm pretty sure deep down, and this is something only I know, that I come across these periods of blankness, of loss of memory. But I do remember one thing clearly, a feeling. And the feeling was that I wouldn't expire, I wouldn't actually die. Because I remember there being a sort of large arm. I can only describe it, that if you think of a whole era of blackness, now imagine an arm, bare arm, but a very strong arm, and pulling you for you to hold on to it, an outstretched arm. And you hold this arm says, in its own way, you can feel it saying, I won't let you go, I won't let you go. And I held on to this arm, and I knew as long as I had that arm that I wouldn't die.
When he was getting better, Spike and I had sent him a wire saying, you swine, we had you heavily insured. But that was perhaps he realized his own mortality then and decided to make the most of life before it happened again. Could have been a reason for some of his behavior, absolutely.
Peter Sellers was 38 when 13 heart attacks in the space of a few days all but killed him. Heart trouble would now plague the rest of his life. He pulled out of the film he was making with the legendary Billy Wilder in Hollywood, and with orders to rest, he returned to his new home in Elstead, Surrey, with his now pregnant wife. At Elstead, he would fill up his time playing court to a succession of pop stars, royalty, as well as old friends from his radio days. They would all be roped into his home movies to be viewed in his private cinema over the garage.
How are you gonna kill this guy? You're gonna give him the hand grenade inside the mouth that goes... If you ain't giving him that, you're gonna slit him out the back, fill him full of cement, and throw him into East River? Gee, Louis, maybe you're gonna chop him up into small pieces, give him the acid bath routine, and pour the sludge down a drain. Well, Louis, if you ain't giving him the hand grenade in the mouth and slit up the back on the East River and the cement and the acid bath, how you gonna kill this guy, Louis? How you gonna kill him?
Mind your own bleeding business, dear. I'll do it my own way.
Can't count.
He came back to Elstead, his lovely home in the country, and amongst the guests, Prince Charles himself used to come down. He came down to lunch, and they used to, because he was a great admirer of the Goons, and Peter Sellers got together Harry Seacombe and Spike Milligan, and they all came down and had this wonderful lunch where there was guffers of laughter coming from the house, and Prince Charles used to actually do the voices. He was very, very good at it. I think he even at times used to phone the office, didn't he?
Well, he used to ring up. I mean, you'd suddenly get the heir apparent, if you like, on the other end of the phone, talking blue bottle at you. And it was lovely. I mean, it was a genuinely warm relationship between them, because it would be Prince Charles quite often that phoned Sellers rather than the other way round.
We're riding along on the crest of a wave and the sun is in the sky. All our eyes on the golden line, but look out for fallen line. We'll do the hailing when all the ships are on a sailing. We're riding along on the crest of a wave and the sun.
7:35 break, we are going to welcome Turk Thrust and the Y-Fronts. Good evening, Turk. Now, what is so new about the Stockport sound?
Well, you know, it's different from the Liverpool sound, really, because we don't sort of masturbate while we're doing it.
Yes, I see. I mean, do you read?
Read what?
Well,
words, you mean?
No, I mean music.
Oh, music, yes.
I mean, are you...
I can tell the name of it because it's usually printed on the top, you see. It says, you know, all my loving I will bring to you.
We met him at numerous parties and different things, but at that time I think we were all more in awe of him because of our childhood, because of the Goons. I mean, you know, we just loved the Goons. That was the greatest thing that we'd ever heard, you know, and that's certainly what I'd ever heard on the radio.
And welcome to the great Twickenham studios, where the boys, the Beatle, are making their new film, Help. And I am actually with the Beatle now to present them with their Grandma Awards, which they have won from America.
After a while, I remember thinking, well, you know, we've met all these people, we met all these film stars and presidents and queens and kings and, you know, we just about met everybody, but there was very few people who actually impressed me.
And there are no more awards. It's an honor, to say the least.
Yeah. And it's nice to have a chance, really, isn't it?
Itza.
Longua.
Longua.
Toi type.
Toi type.
Arrevi.
Arrevi.
It's a long way, toi type arrevi.
You know, it's a very interesting life because he's coming out of this old steam radio period, but he came right through the whole thing, whereas you look at the rest of showbiz, particularly English showbiz, you know, because this happened to the Beatles too, that we came out, we were quite happy to be rubbing shoulders with, you know, Vera Lynn or whatever, you know, Cliff Richard, but we just kept on going for the ultimate experience. And Peter was like that. That's what I liked about him. He wasn't just this person from the radio or from I'm All Right, Jack.
For a while, Hollywood considered Sellers too much of an insurance risk to trust him in another movie. Then a maverick producer called Charles Feldman, who was a fan of Sellers, gave him a cameo part as a Viennese psychiatrist in a star-studded over-the-top comedy called What's New Pussycat. Sellers ran away with the role and the film was a huge hit.
Listen, I'll see you next Friday. I've got a few phone calls to make.
But I haven't finished. I've only been here 15 minutes.
I can't take more than 15 minutes of your sex life at one time. Look, why don't you come to some of my group analysis meetings? Maybe if there's some other people around, it's going to be a lot easier for both of us. Hello, Jaja? This is Fritz. Hi, my little flesh pudding. Hold on. Listen, you like this group analysis. It's a real freak show. If it gets dull, we sing songs.
Oh. Well, do you think it'll help? I mean, I'll do anything to achieve Carol.
Well, if it fails, we will try something else, because I use all kinds of unorthodox methods. For example, I've had the greatest success shutting people in dark closets.
Really?
See you at the next meeting. Bring with you 500 francs. Hello, my little laxative. This is baby Fritzi here.
He must be a genius.
By the time we got back to England that summer, I was pregnant. And the first time I really felt that this is not normal was when Hugh Hefner called him and said, we have photographs of Brit in the nude that we're going to publish in the paper. But we feel that you're such a wonderful photographer, so why don't you take some photographs of her? And we published those instead. And I said, but Peter, I have never, ever in my whole life posted for nude photographs. But he wouldn't listen to me. He said, Hugh Hefner says you have. And he wouldn't listen to me. There was nothing I could say or do. I knew that this is not normal. This is not how a normal man should behave towards his wife, particularly when she's pregnant. I think you always said he's a genius. He can do anything he wants to do. Because if you are a genius, it's a license to behave badly.
With the success of What's New Pussycat, Sellers' career seemed back on course. His health problems receded into the background, and after the birth of his third child, Victoria, he found a way to satisfy Brit's desire to continue her film career with his need to keep her by his side. She would become his co-star in the comedy After the Fox, in which he plays his sister, her blonde hair hidden beneath a black wig.
After the Fox was a script that he'd received, written by Neil Simon, and it was going to be directed by Vittorio De Sica. Now, this great Italian director, he'd admired him since he was ever interested in films. As he read into it, he thought this was going to be a great masterpiece. He was so looking forward to going out. Once again, flew out to Italy, went on location to an island called Ischia, which was wonderful. It was great.
Everything had been working so perfectly. He was suddenly going to do this film with this great Italian director and have his wife on the film, which is something that he really wanted to do, and he was going to make a great big star out of her. And then the whole thing disintegrated, mostly because he became so, well, disillusioned with the whole affair, really.
It wasn't going his way as he'd read into the script. It wasn't going to be what he wanted it to be.
And he wasn't happy with Brit's performance at all, and so therefore that made home life very difficult.
I think it's because he was jealous, and because she was a young, attractive girl, which she was. I think he was afraid that it was going to be taken from him, somehow or other. One day he said to me, he said, the trouble is, he said, this man, De Sica, he said, he thinks in Italian. He said, I think in English. And he said, he's got the wrong perspective of it. It doesn't work. It does not work as it should work.
I'm a very ambitious person. I don't believe by any means that I've even begun to do what's inside me. I have a burning sort of fire inside me to do certain things which I know I'm going to do, and I'm going to defeat all these Burkes that are around me, and I'm going to do it.
After the Fox was Sellers' first real critical and commercial failure since his film career began. But worse was to come, as he agreed to star in Casino Royale, a James Bond spoof that would become the most excessive example of Hollywood's attempt to cash in on the swinging 60s. It was produced by Charles Feldman, who hoped to repeat the success of What's New Pussycat, and so gave Sellers a free hand.
So I went along to the Dorchester and I saw him, where he told me he was going to make Casino Royale, and he would like if I was interested in reading whatever script existed and saying whether or not would I direct it. Well, of course I said, yeah, I'll direct whatever's happening, Peter, and the rest is history.
Joe McGrath was a successful young director of television comedy who had been a friend of Sellers since the late 50s. He had never made a feature film before, yet Sellers had him hired to direct this multi-million-pound folly that was out of control before it started.
Imagine my surprise when we get onto the set and Peter takes me aside and says, I don't want to appear in the same setup as Orson. I don't want to be in the same setup. I don't want to be seen in the same frame as Orson. I said, well, I mean, that's stupid. I mean, apart from anything else, the whole value of having you and Orson together is having you and Orson together. And not only that, but this is Panavision, which is quite wide. And that's when we had a fight in a caravan on the side of the set where he went for me. He said I had just sort of deserted him and left him alone and was no longer, and he swung a punch at me, so I thought, well, I either swing a punch back or else I'll never live this down, so I swung a punch at him as well. The stuntman came in and separated us, and holding us both apart said, I don't know which one of you to hit. I love you both. So Peter started laughing, made up friends, and he said, look, I'm going off. I just have to make a phone call. So he went off the stage and disappeared for 3 weeks. And I was left with Orson, who every morning said to me, where's our thin friend, Joe?
There has been enough crying. Take this soap and wash those lips off your face.
Oh, I hate you. I hate you till I die. Oh, I hate you.
And thank you for uniting my family.
And if I cannot trust you, you are to stay in your room until you are 21 years old.
I go where I want and when I want. Can you say the same, fugitive?
Now just you listen to me, you delinquent,
Sneak,
harlot,
coward,
tramp, starlet. You are never to mention acting again. And you are to put down that flower pot. She never misses.
And looking back now, do you believe that you really loved him, or were you just indeed dazzled?
Oh, no, I really loved him.
And you stayed 5 years and tried to prove it?
I did, and I did my best.
Let's have record number 3.
It's Living Doll.
Got myself a crying, talking, sleeping, walking, living doll.
By 1968, Sellers' marriage to Britt Ekland was all but over, and he entered into an acrimonious struggle over the care and control of their daughter Victoria. He got rid of his house in Elstead and was spending most of his time on location or in tax exile. Meanwhile, his behavior on Casino Royale, combined with several poorly received films, sealed in the minds of the Hollywood studios that he could be a liability to work with. Peter Sellers was now a star without an audience.
What I say, just feel. Gonna lock her up in a trunk, so no big hunk can steal her away from me. Got myself a crying, talking, sleeping, walking.
Damn, my dad's hairy there. He looks like Elvis. And he wears the cool glasses. I like those. Oh my God, Elvis. I fully look like him. Not even like my mom. Rubbing my eyes as always. Sarah looks really good right there. I mean, she really looks good. Yeah, I was like a little dumpling. Look at Bert. He was cool. What a nice job. Hey, you think you can come for the summer on the boat? I don't know. I gotta check my schedule. Huh. As any man would be that is, you know, no longer married. He went out with a lot of different women and traveled here and there and decides to rent a house in this country and for a few months, and then no, now we're going somewhere else to rent a house here, and then we're going to stay in that hotel. And it was very mixed up and jumbled, but I'd say very interesting. All out. Like, we're going all out, you know.
I think he found it very difficult to have a decent relationship. I suppose it probably boils down to his mother, being an only child, becoming rich and famous and never having to, you know, nobody ever saying no to you. I think he found it really hard to sort of come to terms with his relationships, and he was in a position that felt he could just sort of put them to one side and go on to the next. But I mean, it wasn't just women in his life, that's how he operated. You know, once he got bored with one toy, he wanted the next. It was a constant quest, really, and I think the women were just part of that.
I remember when my mother died, although I have children alive, she was the last close relative. I felt a great feeling of loneliness. I just couldn't pick up the phone and speak to my mother anymore. I felt that a lot. Felt that a lot.
Peter, in a funny sort of way, I think if anything awful happened to him, like his mother's death or his father's death, was very nostalgic. I mean, he used to love doing these tours of all the things that happened to him in his life, and he would say, that's where I went to school and I met my first love, and he was then 7 years of age, you know, and he would tell me all about that, sitting outside the school, and then he would take me to his school, St. Aloysius in Highgate, St. Ali Washouts, as he called it, and he would sit there, and then he would take me around, and in fact, when his mother died, I'd then been married, and happily, I might say, for several years. He came round to, I had a little shop, and he came round there and he said, please, will you come round? He said, I just want you to come out in the car and go, and I had to do a tour of all the old places. Because you see, although it was quite bitter when we split up for a time, we ended up actually remaining good friends. And he used to bring me all his new acquisitions in the way of girlfriends, so that Mum could see them and tell him what I thought of them. See? Strange man.
In 1970s, Sellers had entered into his third marriage to Miranda Quarry, stepdaughter of Lord Mancroft.
I was best man at that wedding, and the bridesmaids were the dogs. And then they went off on their honeymoon. I accompanied them, and we were in the south of France, and we were on this yacht, and this was honeymoon time. And then one morning, we couldn't find him. And then the ship-to-shore phone rang, and it was him. He'd booked himself into a hotel, and he'd left his bride of weeks on the yacht with me, and we couldn't work out why. And he was just, I think he regretted it almost immediately. He regretted it. It wasn't working out. It wasn't him, you know.
If and when you get married, you'll be the fourth Mrs. Sellers. Does this frighten you at all?
Oh, no. 4 is my lucky number, my dear.
In 1973, he almost married Liza Minnelli. Over the space of 5 weeks, they met, became engaged, then split up.
Anything on roulette was when I bet on 4.
Well, that's it then. 4. Now, what was that you said?
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. No, that's good.
Peter, I was saying after 3 marriages, yes. You're obviously still not disillusioned with the state of matrimony.
I think that the state of matrimony is an excellent state to be in. And I think if more people thought that way, the less trouble there would be.
During this period, Sellers moved 5 times and ended up renting a flat in a stark utilitarian block in Victoria, a far cry from the baronial splendour of Elstead.
The great thing about this business, being an actor, is that you lead the life of a gypsy. You don't have to stay in any one place too long.
Does this suit you?
Yeah, it very much. Yes. I've been brought up with it. It's been, I come from a theatrical family. I've been sort of touring around all my life. I like roots. Every actor, of course, naturally, every person likes roots, especially actors, because usually they live, in dressing rooms and out of old. Or in digs and skips, baskets, So to have roots is a big thing. But I mean, at the same time, you mustn't let them sort of hang around your neck.
And then later, Peter actually became a hippie around the late 60s and early 70s. And I got to, although I'd met him a number of times before, I got to re-know him through Ravi Shankar, which is kind of an unusual route, because he liked Ravi a lot and became close friends with Ravi Shankar. And at that time, I was with Ravi all the time, learning sitar, and we hung out together, the 3 of us, which was quite an unusual combination. He knew that there was something else in life. The sad thing about Peter was I don't think he fully discovered the self. He was on the road to that. He was doing a lot of yoga, and he was, trying to hone in on who am I? What is it all about?
It was a wonderful summer afternoon. It was our first summer at Brookfield, 1974. And we were entertaining some friends in the garden, quietly, and something made me walk back to the house. I don't know what it was, but as I walked towards the house, I noticed someone standing just inside our front gates, quite still, And even at quite a distance, I realised who it was, Peter Sellers. And I walked up to him and said something inane, such as, "Welcome home." And he said, "Well, I'm just really looking at the garden." And I said, "Well, do come in, please, walk round and come and have a cup of tea." And he said, "Well, really, it's just the garden." So he walked round with a companion for half an hour or so. And he seemed very interested and involved in the way the garden had grown, matured quite a bit. When he was leaving, there was a walnut tree at the end of the path, and he looked hard at the trunk, and he said, "Do you see those holes?" And he said, "Those are lead pellets from Michael's air rifle." And he said, "I wonder if I could bring Michael back here one day. I'd really like him to see the house now."
Once in a while, Chance would turn off the water and sit on the grass and think. The wind, mindless of direction, intermittently swayed the bushes and trees. And yet, with all its life, even at the peak of its bloom, the garden was its own graveyard. Under every tree and bush lay rotten trunks and disintegrated and decomposing roots. It was hard to know which was more important, the garden's surface or the graveyard from which it grew and into which it was constantly lapsing. Chance went inside and turned on the TV. The set created its own light, its own color, its own time. It did not follow the law of gravity that forever bent all plants downward. Everything on TV was tangled and mixed, and yet smoothed out. In this colored world of television, gardening was the white cane of a blind man.
Peter Sellers had read Jerzy Kosinski's novel Being There in 1971. It was a fable about a naive, childlike gardener called Chance, whose knowledge of the world is gleaned from television. His simplicity is mistaken for wisdom and thrusts him unaware into a position of influence at the heart of American politics. Sellers was convinced he saw something of his own life in this character and began pursuing a reluctant Jerzy Kosinski to let him play the role on screen.
By changing the channel, he could change himself. He could go through phases, as gardened plants went through phases, but he could change as rapidly as he wished by twisting the dial backward and forward.
I have great ambitions to do something as an actor, which I will leave, as one said, leave behind me, because I know I have it in me. I know I have it in me, and no sod is going to kill it in the future, because I'm really, whatever I have, and it may be nothing, but whatever I have, I'm going to put up there, and so long as I can get work, that is, and do it. That's the way I feel about it right now, anyway.
You have to understand that Being There was a daily conversation. I mean, we lived with it pretty much daily, didn't we, one way or another over the years?
Up to that point, yeah, exactly. That was his one plan, was to get that off the ground. There was always a problem with Jerzy Kosinski, or something would step in the way.
Sellers found it impossible to get Being There off the ground because he was no longer bankable. It was 1974, 9 years since the hit of What's New, Pussycat. During that time, although he had made 13 films, only one had made any money, 3 were never released, and his fees had plummeted. However, the cinema's mortal enemy, television, was ensuring that Sellers remained a star in people's minds by constant reruns of his greatest moments. Now desperately in need of success, and frustrated at his lack of progress with Being There, Sellers agreed to revive one of his most successful characters, not once, but 3 times.
Monsieur, don't try to be funny with me. He is your monkey, therefore it is your money.
He lives with me, but he is not my monkey. One day I came home and I found him sitting in the living room. I let him stay, but he pays for his own room and board.
Then the monkey is breaking the law.
But he doesn't play any musical instrument.
City Ordinance 132R prohibits the begging.
How do you know so much about city ordinances?
What sort of stupid question is that? Are you blind?
Yes.
He's basically the same. He looks the same. The only difference is that we've made some of his pronunciations more marked.
While he's making up, he's decided on a disguise, right?
Yeah.
If you caught Peter when he was on a downgrade, he'd be okay. He was manageable and rational and wanted it to be successful so he could get back up on top again. And Peter was extremely happy because I was able to negotiate almost for him in terms of a certain amount of risk-taking, but if it worked, the rewards would be enormous. And so Peter got quite wealthy from that project. And it was, again, a fun time, really enjoyable, great time.
And there is a Chinese.
He used to think of Clouseau as him, not as I, as him. And he used to tell me, sometime I met him in the morning, he used to say, you know, I thought up some wonderful stuff for him last night, and the him was the Clouseau. And he had thought up some new ideas to put into the script, because half the scripts were improvised by Peter, sometimes for much too long. But that's how he thought of him, as him. He lived like with a double.
You didn't even arrest the old beggar.
There was some question as to whether the beggar or his monkey was breaking the law.
Minky?
What?
You said minky.
That is correct, yes. Chimpanzee monkey. So I left them both off with a warning.
The beggar was the lookout man for the gang.
That is impossible.
Why?
He was blind. How can a blind man be a lookout?
How can an idiot be a policeman? Answer me that.
It's very simple. All he has to do is enlist.
I think the last Panther Peter ever did, which is, what was it? Was it The Revenge? Yeah, Revenge of the Pink Panther. I remember we were sitting in Hong Kong, and he was going on about this book that this Polish fella had written about a not very intelligent gardener who... And I listened to this description with some funny voices, which is quite funny. I remember thinking, why would Peter want to play a character about whom there are no fireworks, there's no pyrotechnics, there's nothing to do?
We would get on the set and there would be at least an hour of doing absolutely nothing that was to do with the script or the scene, indeed. And it would just be Peter being very silly. And little by little, we would start working on an idea or a line, and it would just be one shot. And very often, that's all we would get in a day. We would get one shot. I mean, a film that had a schedule of, I think, 11 or 12 weeks ended up taking 20 weeks to do.
Does your dog bite? No. Oh. Nice doggy. I thought you said your dog did not bite. That is not my dog.
When they were not on speaking terms, Blake would say to his assistant, would you tell Mr. Sellers I want you to come down the stairs and sit at that table over there? And the messenger would go to Peter, and Peter's assistant would then say, Mr. Sellers doesn't want to come down there, he wants to sit over there, and so on. And we used to stand there, the other actors, looking up at the ceiling, wondering where it would all lead to. Blake was a mature, old war horse from Hollywood, and Peter was like a racehorse before a race, dangerous to walk around him sometimes because he would kick, but also determined to win.
He was a very complicated man. He believed, you know, in soothsayers and fortune tellers. You know, he talked to God. What can I tell you? He calls me up in the middle of the night and says, don't worry about how we're going to do that scene tomorrow. I just talked to God and he told me how to do it. He spoke with his mother, his dead mother all the time, and carried a kind of shrine around with him. That's fairly complicated.
Sellers made 5 Pink Panther films in all. They became the most successful comedy series in film history. Wealthy again, but with his heart problems returning to haunt him, Sellers left England for good. He moved to Gstaad in Switzerland and would soon marry for the 4th time. Lynn Frederick was a 22-year-old actress when they met. He proposed to her after 2 days. She refused. They married a year later in Paris. This time, none of the family were there.
You know, I was introduced to her and we were told that she would like to take me and Michael out for a meal and get to know us. And she seemed, you know, she seemed quite nice to begin with. And I actually told Dad I thought she was a bit stupid. And I think that probably the answer was I was a bit stupid. But she came across as very bubbly and friendly and warm and interested. But once they got married, things definitely changed.
I couldn't understand it, and I still don't understand it today. Why? After all I had given, he'd given a lot as well, but we also gave.
I got a call really late one night, and it was Peter on the phone, and he said, I'm going to dictate a letter, and I don't want you to say anything. I just want you to take it down. Don't say anything. And he started to dictate the letter. Essentially, it was dismissing Bert. And I couldn't believe it.
And I just could not understand why he would want to break that relationship. And even today, as I say, I can't tell you why.
Sellers' dependency on Lynn Frederick increased as he suffered a series of minor heart attacks. But now that he was a bankable star again and in a position to make being there at last, he strove to cover up the true extent of his failing health.
Lynn was like a nurse. It sort of seemed like it was like he needed help doing things, and he had like pill-taking times, and, you know, we can't do this because we can't get Dad all excited, you know. It just seemed like she was a nurse or an aide or something.
She didn't want to live with him. She wanted to be married, and so they married. That was the beginning. And then I think later on, as he was ill, he wasn't old, but he seemed old, and she nursed him and looked after him, had taken over very much the running of his life. And again, I think it was, a lot of it was fear, was the fear of having to deal with things himself again and being alone again. And he had alienated so many people by this point that it was very much, I think he saw it very much as Lynn was the one thing in his life, the one person in his life who was there.
When I wrote Being There, and when it was published in 1971, Peter Sellers wrote me a letter at the time saying that I have invaded his life. I met him, and I thought he was joking. And then for the next 7.5 years, Peter Sellers became Chauncey Gardiner. He printed his calling cards as Chauncey Gardiner, his stationery as Chauncey Gardiner, and I thought he was joking, that this was merely an actor going after a novelist to make a movie of a novel he liked. And then one day, he stopped me in Malibu, in Hollywood, We were in the same house. And he said, "You don't understand. I am Chauncey Gardiner."
Yowza.
Ah, ain't you the gentleman this morning? I'm gonna go now, Chance.
Yes.
You're gonna need somebody. You ought to find yourself a lady, Chance. I guess it ought to be an old lady. You ain't gonna do a young one any good. Not with that little thing of yours.
He was living in America at that time, so I would go stay with him. If he was living here for a few months, that would just be automatically, I'm going to my dad's. He was renting Larry Hagman's beach house in the Colony. I remember Jerzy Kosinski came over all the time, and my dad and him hit it off really well. And they were talking about, you know, doing this, being there and everything. And then I didn't see him during any of the shooting time of that at all till after. But that was his, like, baby, that movie, and he felt really, really good about it. And he was excellent in it.
There was Peter Sellers, a almost simplified man, a reductive man, and no one knew anything about it. Everyone assumed that Peter Sellers was a brilliant actor who was also an intellectual. He was a brilliant actor, but he was actually extremely reductive. Chauncey Gardiner is an actual Peter Sellers. During the filming of Being There, Peter Sellers, therefore, for the first time in his life, became himself. He became Chauncey Gardiner. He refused to talk to people outside. He didn't pretend he was a great lover or an intellectual, because he never was. He was always imitating others. Being There was his spiritual portrait. For once, he didn't have to pretend. And so what you see in Being There is not Chauncey Gardiner. What you see in Being There is actual Peter Sellers.
You're always gonna be a little boy, ain't you? Goodbye, Chance.
Bye, Louise.
Now, when he was at St. Fred's, he had a gardener, lovely character. Gardener, remember, and Chance was a gardener in Being There. And Mr. Dewberry was called the gardener, and he had a wonderful way of walking, which was rather automatic, and a way of smacking his lips. And he said one day, and Peter loved it, he said, "I tell you, Mr. Sellers," he said, "that over there is going to die, but of course it will be replaced. That will die, but it will be replaced. But that one over there, that'll be permanent, always there." And Peter thought, permanent, wonderful. He never showed it, he's laughing like mad. And then, when he used to go to Hollywood, he loved Stan Laurel. He loved his work, but he loved the man. Stan, I believe, was living not exactly as a pauper, but not certainly to the state he should have been in a small apartment in Los Angeles. And he used to go and have tea with him. And if you think about it, and I remember Peter talking about it, Stan Laurel and Mr. Dewberry together, and Peter's own combination of putting them two together was Chance in Being There.
Just how long have you been living here, Mr. Chance?
Ever since I can remember. Ever since I was a child, I've worked in this garden.
Then you really are a gardener.
My roses.
We will need some proof of your having resided here, Mr. Chance.
You have me. I'm here. That's where Joe fixed the wall.
Are you related to the deceased, Mr. Chance?
I don't think so.
Being there was about Peter Sellers leaving a tranquil garden for the unruly world. So they gave a party where the unruly world tried to get into a tranquil garden. Eventually, a bewildered Peter Sellers was led into the garden himself, only to find it less tranquil than when he left it.
I heard there was a lot of French films being shown down here.
One accolade that always eluded Sellers was an Oscar. On Dr. Strangelove, he had lost out to Rex Harrison for his performance in My Fair Lady. This time, Sellers was convinced that his portrayal of Chance would win it. Instead, the Academy gave the award to Dustin Hoffman for Kramer vs. Kramer. Having spent much of the 70s pursuing the most ambitious role of his life, Sellers was bitterly disappointed not to get the recognition he felt he deserved. He responded, as always, by making another film. The fiendish plot of Dr. Fu Manchu was not released till after his death. It was one of the worst received films of his career.
I had a portent that something was going to happen. So I phoned him up in Paris. I said, "Oh, look, Peter, we're all getting old." I said, "For God's sake, you know, how about one more dinner?" "Yes, of course," he said. "One more dinner."
On the 21st of July 1980, Peter Sellers checked into his favorite suite at the Dorchester prior to a reunion dinner with fellow goons Harry Seacombe and Spike Milligan. A few hours before meeting them, he suffered his last heart attack. He was 54.
Here we have one of the really up-and-coming personalities that the past year or so's broadcasting has produced. With his amusing comedy impressions, I'm always very glad to reintroduce the rising star of Raise a Laugh and Petticoat Lane and so forth, Peter Sellers.
The cremation was attended by family and close friends only, but hundreds waited in torrential rain for a glimpse of the coffin. Afterwards, his son Michael helped his father's fourth wife, Lynn Frederick, from the chapel. His two daughters, Sarah and Victoria, followed. And Peter Sellers' second wife, actress Britt Eklund, stopped to talk to Canon John Hester, a close family friend who conducted the service. Other mourners included two fellow actors from the Goon shows, Harry Seacombe and Spike Milligan. They were a reminder of Sellers' successful radio career.
So we never really had the dinner, which was very sad. And when he died, the most poignant thing to me was the fact that Blue Bottle was dead in for the last time. You know, there's no getting him back into the frame whole and ready to go again. Shame that.
And one of the floral tributes was from the Pink Panther. The actor's ashes will now be buried in the crematorium garden alongside those of his father and mother. The Church of England service ended with the actor's favourite tune, In the Mood.
And I'm afraid I remembered, you see, Pete and I, when we started off, we always used to go down to the Café de Paris to try and pick up the girls, the ATS and the WAFs. And that's exactly the music we used to dance to. LAC Sellers and Sergeant Stark in blue, chatting up the girls.
But they put it on a little tape recorder, and when they played it, it was just like playing one of those tiny little domestic ones. And of course, Milligan and Seacombe and Benteen were just all falling about laughing because he wanted to have the full Glenn Miller sound, and it wasn't. And that was just a shame that it didn't quite come out like that.
What was funny was that all the wives were at the back crying, and all the goons were at the back laughing.
Guess who? The old retainer. Spike said they had a conversation not long before my father died, and they were talking about funny things, and he said, and my father said to Spike, he said, "I want to laugh again. Can't we do something? I want to laugh again. I want to laugh like we used to."
And I thought he would pull through. I really did. He'd done it so many times, he'd defeated death. But this time he didn't, dear boy. And I missed him. I miss him very, very much. He was an irreplaceable part in my life. He was a wonderful part. I was able to pick up the phone to him and we'd go off into fantasies straight away, yeah. He used to phone me up sometimes and speak to me. His blood doctor. Hello, who are you? What are you doing there? Who are you? Speak up, man. All this. It's a dreadful man. Oh, he was wonderful.
You got to rock and roll in a roll call way. You got to march with a Marilyn Monroe sway. You got to rock and roll with your old kick bag, but you mustn't ever mention her name in the mess. And if you want to know the title of this number, it's a Major Dennis Bludner rock and roll called Rumba. Left, 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 right, left, quick, slow, quick, slow, in, out. In and out, pick up your gun, shove a bullet up the spout. That's a dance they do from Madras to Pango Pango. It's a Major Dennis Bludner rock and roll called tango. Oh, dum diddle floaty ho, Bombay baby bullet cha. Yum diddle do do do.
Stop that simple naughty record type music. Stop it, I say! Stop it! Oh, stop it!
Oh, fudder me putties and sell me toppy. Why? Do me beady old eyes deceive me, or is it? It's me old childhood sweetheart, Spotty Minnie Bannister.
Oh,